of Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, you find that he spent a lot of time dealing with conflict. He dealt with 3 civil wars. So 3 battles in 4 years. Now, in addition to dealing with political enemies, the Imam alayhi salam also kept a very close eye on the performance of his governors. You know, usually during time of war, you're focused on your military expeditions, and you might, turn a blind eye to what's happening in your own administration. And typically, what you see, governments usually don't point the finger, at their own officials. The president, for example, is not usually going to call out people who are his political supporters. They're not going to be transparent. But with Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, you find that he was critical of his own governors. He used to criticize his own governors when they did not conduct themselves in an appropriate manner. As I mentioned, Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, he used to emphasize the importance of living very frugally, especially if you're in a position of power. There's an interesting letter in Nahj al-Balagha where the Imam alayhi salam addresses one of his own governors. Politicians are very good at pointing the finger at, governments or government officials when they're not in power. And typically they cover up, they turn a blind eye, when it's their own administration, doing the wrong. Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, when he's the Khalifa, he receives news that his own governor, Uthman ibn Hunayf, not to be confused with Uthman ibn Affan, his own governor, accepted an invitation to attend a banquet, a very lavish dinner that was organized by an influential person in Basra. So this is basically, if I want to use modern terms, an influential person in Basra was lobbying. They were lobbying one of the governors of Amir al-Mu'mineen. So he attends this lavish dinner, and news reaches Ali ibn Abi Talib that one of his governors was brushing shoulders, with the rich and famous. The Imam alayhi salam doesn't make excuses, because he doesn't turn a blind eye because it's his own guy. He writes a letter to him. And he says to him, Amma ba'd, a very stern letter. And you can tell from the letter when Amir al-Mu'mineen is not happy. He says, Amma ba'd, ya ibn Hunayf, O son of Hunayf, فقد بلغني أن رجلا من فتية أهل البصرة دعاك إلى مأدبه. News has reached me that you attended a banquet, a lavish banquet organized by one of the youth of Basra, someone who is very influential. And usually when wealthy people invite politicians, what are they doing? They're trying to influence public policy. They're lobbying. The Imam says, فَأَسْرَعْتَ إِلَيْهَا. You were invited by a wealthy person, and you went quickly. فَأَسْرَعْتَ إِلَيْهَا. تُسْتَطَابُ لَكَ الْأَلْوَانِ. You attended a dinner, and there were so many different types of food. A rich assortment of foods. وَتُنْقَلُ إِلَيْكَ الْجِفَانِ. They brought out many dishes. وَمَا ظَنَنْتُ أَنَّكَ تُجِيبُ إِلَى طَعَامِ قَوْمٍ عَائِلُهُمْ مَجْفُو وَغَنِيُّهُمْ مَدْعُو. The Imam says, I never thought that you would accept an invitation from people who ignore the poor and give attention to the rich. did the man commit murder? He didn't commit murder. You know, he didn't steal money from Baytul Mal. What did he do? He gave more attention to the wealthy. And the Imam alayhi salam rebuked him for this. You need to spend more of your time with the people that don't have food. When you're a governor in my government, you don't have a free pass to enjoy life and dine with the rich and live it up, you know, as we say. You have a responsibility. We're trying to establish social justice. We're trying to look after the fuqara. And you go to a mansion and you have dinner with the rich. And these are people who are known for neglecting the poor. The Imam tells him, and the Imam is able to talk to him like that, because the Imam practices what he preaches. أَلَا وَإِنَّ لِكُلِّ مَأْمُومٍ إِمَامٍ يَقْتَدِي بِهِ وَيَسْتَضِيءُ بِنُورِ عِلْمِهِ. Everyone has an Imam, everyone has a leader. You claim to be my follower, you say that I'm your leader. Let me tell you about me. You're a governor, I'm the Khalifa. Now you would imagine if the governor is living like this, the Khalifa should be, you know, really living it up. The Imam says, I'm the Khalifa. You want me to tell you how I live? He says, ألا وإن إمامكم قد اكتفى من دنياه بطمري ومن طعمه بقرصي. I'm the Khalifa. I'm your Imam. I am the ruler of an empire that covers 50 countries on today's map. Do you know how I live? I have 2 garments of clothes. I have 2 clothes. One for the winter and one for the summer. There are narrations that say the Imam alayhi salam on many occasions he'd be sitting on the minbar giving a sermon and he'd be fanning his garments. One of his companions is sitting there listening and his son was there. The son asks his father, why is Ali ibn Abi Talib, you know, fanning his clothes? He says, because your Imam only has 1 garment in the summer and he washed it today and it's still damp and he's airing it out. This is the Imam. He satisfied himself with 2 pieces of clothing. That's what he wears. What does the Imam eat? He says, every day I eat 2 loaves of barley bread. Qursay, 2 loaves of, not meat, not rice, not 2 loaves of barley bread. And then the Imam explains why. Why do I impose this type of lifestyle on myself? He says, أَأَقْنَعُ مِن نَفْسِي أَن يُقَالْ هَذَا أَمِيرُ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ وَلَا أُشَارِكُهُمْ فِي مَكَارِهِ الدَّارِ. Can I really be satisfied being called the commander of the faithful if I do not share in the suffering of the fuqara? Maybe there's someone in the Islamic empire who doesn't have food. I'm afraid to meet Allah on the day of judgment, having worn fine clothes in dunya, and then maybe a faqir will say to Allah on the day of Qiyamah that Ali wore fine clothes while we had ragged clothes. Ali filled his stomach while we went to bed hungry. The Imam says, I will live at the level of the poorest person. So when the faqir visits the Imam, he doesn't feel like the Imam is living better than him. He feels, you know, comfortable. He feels that the Imam knows what I'm going through because he's at the same economic level. My dear brothers and sisters, this is how the Imam was. He had access. You know, people have this misconception that Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen was poor. The Imam alayhi salam was high in production, low in consumption. He used to work. The Imam alayhi salam used to give so much to the poor that when he had nothing else to give, he would take out loans and give to the poor. You know, it's one thing if you have money, you give. When he doesn't have, he takes out a loan. You know, you and I, have you ever taken out a loan to help someone? No, but you take out a loan to get a flat screen TV, you take out a loan to get, you know, Louis Vuitton handbags. We take out loans for ourselves. Amir al-Mu'minin used to take out loans to help the poor. You know, usually when a Khalifa, a president, a king, an emperor dies, that's when we find out how much money they really had. How much money they've been hiding and storing. When Amir al-Mu'minin died, when Rasulullah died, not only did they leave nothing behind, they had debt. That's why Imam Amir al-Mu'minin tells Imam al-Hassan that you are my successor and you are the one who pays off my debts. Why did the Imam have debts? Because he used to take out loans to help the poor. So Amir al-Mu'minin, on the one hand, he was training his governors to be selfless. You're a public servant. Key word, servant. You're not in power so people can serve you. And the Imam always kept a very close eye on his governors. Imagine, you're in the middle of war. To take the time to send a letter to a governor in Basra who was cozying up to the rich. Can you imagine how serious the Imam was monitoring them? How much he cared for the fuqara, that he doesn't want a governor who's getting a little too comfortable with the rich. He warned him that if you continue this behavior, you're done. So the Imam alayhi salam was training his governors, keeping a close eye, ensuring that they were working to meet his objective, establishing economic equality in the society. And of course, he was dealing with these military campaigns, the Battle of Jamal, the Battle of Siffin, as we mentioned. And now he's dealing with this radical group that has emerged, this Takfiri group, who are interrupting his sermons, who are calling him a kafir, who are mobilizing an army now to fight. They're committing acts of aggression and violence against others, killing innocent people. Now, the Imam alayhi salam understands that he needs to eliminate Muawiyah. So the Imam alayhi salam, he gathers his troops. And you can imagine that after the Battle of Siffin, it's going to be difficult to convince people to come back to the battlefield. They spent so much time away from their families, wounded. So the Imam alayhi salam was trying to recruit people to go and topple Muawiyah. He was trying to motivate people to join. Out of tens and hundreds of thousands, 1,500 people were willing to fight. Initially it was 45,000, now it's 1,500. The Imam alayhi salam gets in contact with Ibn Abbas, who he puts as one of the governors of Basra for a period of time. And he writes a letter to Ibn Abbas and says that I need soldiers. We have to deal with Muawiyah. Because Khawarij, I mean, these are symptoms of the problem. The real cancer is Muawiyah. As long as he's in power, he's a threat. So Ibn Abbas is able to send 3,000. So now the Imam alayhi salam has 4,500 soldiers. Still not enough. You know, if you want to bring down Muawiyah, you need a lot more than 4,500. So the Imam alayhi salam goes and meets with the tribe leaders in Kufa. He tells them that it is imperative now that we strike and we bring Muawiyah down. This guy is not going to go away. You know, the Imam won the battle of Jamal. The battle of Siffin was not a victory. And the Imam alayhi salam meets with the tribe leaders. He's able to rally the support. He gets 65,000 people to join him. Because again, when you contact the tribe leaders, when the tribe leader gives the order, the entire tribe joins. So the Imam alayhi salam wants to motivate his men to travel to Sham and to go fight Muawiyah. Now, Ash'ath ibn Qais, the man that I mentioned who has that wonderful family, you know, the daughter that poisons Imam al-Hassan, son who fights Imam al-Hussein, you know, this family. And he was also, you know, bribed by Muawiyah. We have historical accounts that mention this. He creates problems in the army of Amir al-Mu'mineen. What does he say? He says, "Oh Ali, you want us to leave our families and the Khawarij are nearby, they might kill our families. How can we leave? You see that these Khawarij are violent. We can't just leave our homes vacant, leave our women and children. They might be killed and massacred by the Khawarij." People start making excuses as to why they don't want to join. Again, people are already reluctant to go and fight. As soon as they hear any type of excuse, they want to hold on to that excuse. The Imam alayhi salam tells them that, listen, these Khawarij, they are a symptom of the problem. If we destroy Muawiyah, we've eliminated the cancer. But many of them refuse. So the Imam alayhi salam is forced to deal with the Khawarij before marching towards Sham. The Imam alayhi salam begins negotiations with the Khawarij. Again, the reason why the Imam is intervening is because they're actually committing acts of violence. His men are refusing to go unless he deals with the Khawarij. So he starts to send messengers to negotiate with the Khawarij. Every time the Imam sends them a messenger, they kill him. These people don't want negotiation. So the Imam alayhi salam, he decides to go himself and meet with the Khawarij. There are about 4,000 of them. And he says to them, listen, how many of you were in Siffin? He kind of divides the Khawarij between those who were in Siffin and those who were not. He speaks to them. He's able to get 1,500 of them to join him. You know, some of them were brainwashed. He speaks to them. He tells them to listen, our main enemy is Muawiyah. If you have any other complaints, we can address them, but we have a common enemy now. And the Khawarij did have a problem with Muawiyah. So then there are 2,500 of them left. Staunch Khawarij, refusing to budge, who consider Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib a kafir. And they're telling the Imam that you have to do tawbah. You have to do tawbah. You have to repent for the sin of entering into that arbitration with Muawiyah. You guys were the one who pressured me. They refuse, and some of the Imam's soldiers were saying that, Ya Amir al-Mu'min, how can we fight them? They recite Quran, they pray Salatul Layl, they're religious. Again, the naive mentality. The Imam says, listen, he tells his men that no more than 10 of us are going to be killed in this battle. So there's not going to be heavy casualties, if that's what you're worried about. Furthermore, out of these 2,500, no more than 10 of them will survive. Meaning, they're going to be annihilated. The battle takes place, and the Imam alayhi salam, it wasn't like Siffin, it was a very quick battle. The Imam annihilates them. And only 9 of them survive. 9 of them survive, and they escape to different parts of the Islamic empire. So now the Khawarij are finished for the time being. The Imam says, okay, now there's no excuse. Now we march towards Sham and we deal with Muawiyah. Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen in Nahj al-Balagha, you can hear the frustration. What do they say? They say it's too hot. It's summertime. Let's wait until the weather becomes cooler. The Imam waits. Winter time. They say, oh, it's too cold. The Imam alayhi salam, he says, فَإِذَا أَمَرْتُكُمْ بِالسَّيْرِ إِلَيْهِمْ فِي أَيَّامِ الْحَرِّ. When I tell you, let us go and march in the summer, you complain that it's too hot. When I tell you, let us march in the winter time, you say it's too cold. The Imam then tells them that if you're afraid of cold and heat, if you escape from weather, what are you going to do when you see the swords? If you're complaining about heat and cold, you're going to retreat when you see the swords. That's why the Imam used to say, Ya ashbah al-rijal wa la rijal. You look like men, but you're not men. The Imam alayhi salam, they kept on insisting that the Imam alayhi salam waits. The month of Ramadan arrives, and in that month the Imam is killed. They kept on postponing, making excuses. The Imam had the intentions of going and eliminating Muawiyah. You know, if he killed Muawiyah, there would have never no Yazid. Karbala would have never happened. We'd be living in a different world. If you trace it back, what was the excuse? People just didn't want to be inconvenienced. They didn't want to be inconvenienced. If they had listened to Amir al-Mu'mineen, Muawiyah would have been defeated. Imam al-Hasan alayhi salam would have ruled. Imam al-Hussein would have ruled. Can you imagine Imam after Imam actually ruling? We'd be living in a different world today. We'd be living in a different world. Can you imagine the Imam didn't fight 3 civil wars? Can you imagine the Muslims actually allowed him to rule the world, to rule the Islamic empire? Islam would have spread to every corner of the world. Imagine Imam al-Hasan ruling for 30 years, and then Imam al-Hussein ruling for 30 years. Imagine Fatima al-Zahra living to the age of 60. Can you imagine how far, issues of women's rights would have, how advanced we would be? We would have a much deeper appreciation of women and what they can contribute to society. We'd be living in a different world. But you see how these mistakes literally change the course of history. Now, these Khawarij, I mentioned that 9 of them survived the Battle of Nahrawan. And out of the 9, 3 of the Khawarij, they meet. And they decide that they want to eliminate 3 individuals. 3 prominent political figures. So they have a hit list. So 3 of the 9 Khawarij, they have a hit list. We want to kill Muawiyah. We want to kill Amr ibn al-As, and we want to kill Ali ibn Abi Talib. Can you imagine? Imam is on that list. They consider these people the source of political discord, the source of fitna in the Muslim community. So the Khawarij believe that these 3 men, they're the source of all the problems. Now, the men who go to Sham, because Muawiyah is in Damascus, The two men who go to Sham to kill Muawiyah and Amr ibn al-As, they're captured. They're arrested. Ibn Muljim is the third one. He comes to Kufa to do what? To assassinate Amir al-Mu'mineen. Now, Ibn Muljim arrives in Kufa. He arrives in Kufa in the month of Sha'ban, 1 month before the month of Ramadan, which goes to show you how much planning went behind the assassination of Ali ibn Abi Talib. This was not just an overnight decision. He arrives in Kufa in the month of Sha'ban, and he ends up meeting a woman who was also from among the Khawarij, because there were men and women who were part of that ideology. He met a woman whose father and brothers were killed by Ali ibn Abi Talib in the Battle of Nahrawan, and he falls in love with her. He was infatuated by her beauty, and this woman's name was Qutam, and he wants to marry her. He falls in love. So he decides to, they have the same aqidah, so he decides to propose to her. He wants to marry her. She tells him that I'll marry you, but I have a very specific mahar. My dowry is something that you might not be able to deliver. He says, anything. She says to him that my dowry is the head of Ali ibn Abi Talib. It's very similar to the story of Yahya. Yes. My dowry is this man who killed my father and my brother in Nahrawan. Ibn Muljim, if he had any hesitation about assassinating Ali ibn Abi Talib, now he's even more motivated. He wanted to assassinate Ali even before he met this woman. Now he has another incentive, that I get to marry this beautiful woman if I kill Ali ibn Abi Talib. So he promises her that I will kill Ali, and I'm willing to also kill Hassan and Hussein, if this is what it takes for you to accept my proposal. So Ibn Muljim is in Kufa, and he spends a lot of time watching Ali ibn Abi Talib. Amir al-Mu'mineen is living in Kufa. He wants to learn the daily routine of Ali ibn Abi Talib. He wants to know where he goes, who he meets, when he goes to the mosque. So he watches him very, very carefully. And he meets with some of the other Khawarij, and they rehearse and they practice different scenarios in preparation to kill him. Ibn Muljim purchases a sword for 1,000 dinars, very expensive sword. And he purchases poison. And he dips his sword in poison for 3 days to make sure that it's soaked with this lethal poison. Ibn Muljim, again, he's making these preparations. One day, he goes to Masjid al-Kufa. Amir al-Mu'mineen is sitting in Masjid al-Kufa with his companions. He enters and he doesn't even say salam to the Imam. Amir al-Mu'mineen, he notices him and he says to him, "Ma ta'amalu huna? What are you doing? I see you wandering around. What are you doing?" He says to the Imam, "Atufu fi aswaq al-Kufa wa anzuru fiha." He says, "I'm just walking around in the marketplace, seeing, what's in the bazaar, what's in the marketplace. Just wandering." The Imam alayhi salam, look at how even when he's speaking to the person that he knows is going to assassinate him, the Imam still gives him sincere advice on how to develop himself. He says, عَلَيْكَ بِالْمَسَاجِدِ فَإِنَّهَا خَيْرٌ لَكَ مِنْ الْبُقَاعِ كُلِّهَا. He says, instead of spending so much time in the marketplace, spend time in the masajid. Do dhikr. Develop your relationship with Allah, because the masajid are the best places to be. And the worst places to be is the marketplace. Especially if you go to the Middle East, oof, everybody has authentic aqiq rings. Everybody has, you meet a lot of very dishonest people. Some of the most wicked people, you'll meet them in the marketplace because they're trying to trick and con people. The Imam says, spend more time in the masajid. Build yourself, connect with your Lord. So the Imam, he talks to him and he gives him some very genuine advice. And then Ibn Muljim leaves. Imam is sitting with Maytham al-Tammar and others. The Imam looks at him as he's walking away, and the Imam says, أُرِيدُ حَيَاتَهُ وَيُرِيدُ قَتْلِي. That I want to give him life, but he wants to kill me. Look at the Imam says, I want to give him life. I want him to live a good life, but he wants death for me. And then the Imam says, Ya Maytham, hadha wallahi qatili. Oh Maytham, this is the man who's going to kill me. Maytham al-Tammar, he loved Amir al-Mu'mineen. You can imagine how heartbreaking it was for Maytham to hear this. He says, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, فَلِمَ لَا تَقْتُلُ أَنْتَ قَبْلَ ذَلِكَ. If you know that he's going to kill you, why don't you, strike him preemptively? Why don't you attack him before he attacks you? Arrest him. Kill him. Believe me, only Ali ibn Abi Talib has this type of discipline. He says, Ya Maytham, لَا يَحِلُّ الْقِصَاص قَبْلَ الْفِعْلِ. Oh Maytham, how can I punish a man before he's committed a crime? He hasn't done anything. Do you know how many governments around the world, they'll throw you in prison all your life because they're suspicious of you? The Imam says he hasn't done anything. I cannot punish. Rasulullah taught us that we don't punish people until they've committed a crime. The Imam alayhi salam, it's the month of Ramadan, and we all know about this tragic story of his martyrdom. But I just want to share with you, I don't want to take too much of your time, but I want to just share with you a conversation that Amir al-Mu'mineen has on the eve of his martyrdom. After the death of Fatima al-Zahra, the Imam alayhi salam had a habit of distributing his nights with his children. So one night he would stay, especially in the month of Ramadan, he would spend one night with Imam al-Hassan, and then one night he'd spend it with Imam al-Hussein and his family, and then one night with Sayyida Zainab, and then the other night with Kulthum. On the eve of the 19th, the Imam alayhi salam was with Kulthum. And she was the youngest. And daughters have a very special relationship with their fathers, especially when it's the youngest one. There's a very strong attachment. She says that my father was different on the eve of the 19th. That he would hold his beard, he would look up at the sky, and he kept on saying that hiya wallahi al-layla, that this is the night. She said it was the time of iftar. My father, he prayed, and when he finished his salah, I brought his meal, his iftar. The Imam alayhi salam, he sees the food on the tray and he begins to cry. He says, Ya bunayya ma dhanantu in anna bintan tasu'u abaha kama asa'ti anti ilay. He says to his daughter Kulthum that I never thought a daughter would mistreat her father like the way that you are mistreating me now. She says, what have I done? I put food in front of you. What have I done wrong? Amir al-Mu'mineen, he says to his daughter, Ya bunayya atuqaddimina ila abiki idamain fi tabaqin wahid. Are you putting two types of food in front of your father? Don't you know that a person who eats well in dunya and drinks well in dunya, his hisab will be prolonged? Why are you prolonging my qiyamah? Take away one of the foods. What did she put on the tray, you may ask? Bread, salt, and yogurt. The Imam says, remove the yogurt. I'll have water and bread. Imagine, the Imam says, it's halal, brothers and sisters. But even the Imam alayhi salam, he says, Ya bunayya inna dunya fi halaliha hisab. Even when you partake in lawful things, Allah is still going to question you about it. وَفِي حَرَامِهَا عِقَاب. And when you commit haram, there's punishment. وَفِي الشُّبُهَاتِ عِتَاب. And when it comes to ambiguous things where it's not clear, you will be blameworthy for not taking your deen more seriously. And then Amir al-Mu'mineen, he tells his daughter that, Ya bunayya qad akhbarani habibi Rasulullah, that, oh my daughter, Rasulullah once told me that Jibreel came to me with the keys to the treasures of this dunya. And Jibreel said to me, you may tell me, where did Amir al-Mu'mineen get this zuhud from? This indifference towards this material world. He says, I heard the Prophet say to me one day that Jibreel came and offered me the treasures of dunya. Ya Muhammad, inna rabbaka yuqri'uka salam. Allah conveys his salam to you, Ya Rasulullah. You can have the dunya and everything in it. You can have the luxuries and enjoy the worldly enjoyments and delights. وَلَا يَنْقُصُ مِنْ حَظِّكَ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ. You can enjoy the dunya. You can indulge in the pleasures of this life, and nothing of your status in the hereafter will be decreased. Imagine an offer like that was made to us. You're going to get Jannah and you have the green light to just enjoy this life. Rasulullah asks Jibreel, Ya Jibreel, وَمَا يَكُونُ بَعْدَ ذَلِكَ. What happens after I enjoy dunya? قال الموت. You die, you leave. No matter how much you enjoy and indulge, eventually you have to leave. Rasulullah says, إِذَنْ لَا حَاجَةَ لِي فِي الدُّنْيَا. Rasulullah says, I'm not interested in dunya. Amir al-Mu'mineen was the same. He would say, what does Ali have to do with pleasures that don't last? What lasts is nearness to Allah, the pleasure of being close to Him. And Rasulullah says, what do I have to do with this type of dunya where after enjoyment there's death? أَجُوعُ يَوْمًا وَأَشْبَعُ يَوْمًا. Rasulullah says, leave me. Let me be full some days and let me be hungry other days. فَالْيَوْمَ الَّذِي أَجُوعُ فِي أَتَضَرَّعُ إِلَىٰ رَبِّي وَأَسْأَلُهُ. On the days that I'm hungry, I'll ask Allah to give me. And on the days that my hunger is satiated, I'll thank Allah. I prefer this type of relationship, where I go through times of need, where I go through days of hunger and days of satisfaction. That's the type of relationship I want. This is the way to remain humble. My dear brothers and sisters, I don't want to take too much time. I want to leave a little bit of time for Q&A. You know, Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, as I mentioned, you know, it's easy to be distracted when you're in a position of power. But Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, even though he was the Khalifa, he never neglected the poor. You know, politicians always talk about how they care about the working class, they're going to do this and that. And whenever they do anything that's good, they have to make sure that there are cameras. They have to make sure that someone is taking pictures. Do you know how many families Amir al-Mu'mineen was supporting with his own personal wealth when he was the Khalifa? He wasn't campaigning. He used to go out in the middle of the night. Even when he was in the middle of wartime, he had all these enemies. There were people that wanted to assassinate him. He would go out without bodyguards at night. And he would distribute food to the poor. He wouldn't knock on their doors and say, I am the commander of the faithful, here's food. They wouldn't even know it was him. He would drop off the food quietly. For years he would do this. You know, the Imam is a bit, you know, when you're the Khalifa, you're a busy person. He didn't even delegate the task to someone else. It's not that he called Maytham or Ammar ibn Yasir and said, you know, here's food, go and distribute it to the poor. I have other issues to tend to. The Imam did it himself. He made the time to physically go out and distribute the food. For years, people were receiving aid, they were receiving food. And you know when they found out who the person was who was taking care of them? On the 19th of Ramadan, when Amir al-Mu'mineen was struck and he was on his deathbed, that's when the food stopped. Because they hear Ali ibn Abi Talib has been struck, straight away the food was not delivered that day. And then they all knew that for years Amir al-Mu'mineen was taking care of them, providing for them. He was busy fighting Jamal, Siffin, Nahrawan, so many enemies, so many problems, the betrayal, but he never forgot them. Amidst all of these problems, he never forgot them. After Imam al-Hassan and Imam al-Hussein, they bury their father, they're walking back home and they pass through the alleyways of Kufa and they see a blind man, a handicapped man, sitting in the street crying. They say to him, what's wrong? Is everything okay? Why are you weeping? Why are you so distraught? They say that I haven't seen my friend for 3 days. For 3 days. Who is your friend? He says, he was a man that I'm blind. He was a man who identified himself as Abdullah, the servant of God. He would come, I'm blind, I don't have any family, I have nothing. He would come and he would sit with me every day. When he was in town, he would come, he would sit, and he would put the food in my mouth. Can you imagine the patience? He would sit with me, he would talk to me. I was so lonely. But he always came to me, he gave me food, and he would talk to me. He made me feel like I was the most important person. But he hasn't come to me in 3 days. What happened to him? Did he move away? Imam al-Hassan and Imam al-Hussein, they begin to cry. They say, this man was our father. This was Amir al-Mu'mineen. This was Amir al-Mu'mineen. This was the Khalifa. This was the commander of the faithful. He came and he sat with me. I'm nobody. Usually these rulers, they sit with the powerful, the wealthy. He sat with me, a person who was homeless, poor. He gave me that type of attention. The narrations say that this man cried so much until he died of grief. How can I go on living after Ali ibn Abi Talib? Who's going to look after me? Who's going to pay attention to me? Who's going to care for me? If Ali ibn Abi Talib has left this world, I don't want to be alive anymore. This is the life of Amir al-Mu'mineen. You know, this is how he ran his government. He was just with his enemies. He was compassionate with the rich. He admonished, he was compassionate with the poor. He admonished the rich. He cared about people. Even his enemy, as I mentioned, his murderer, he gave him sincere advice. And the Imam, this is what he wanted. All the Imam wanted from the people was he wanted them to live good lives, lives of piety, of righteousness. But how did the world pay back Ali ibn Abi Talib? The same Imam who used to look after the orphans of others, what did the Muslims do to his orphans? What did they do to Hassan and Hussein? How did Amir al-Mu'mineen treat the daughters of others? Even Aisha, after the battle of Siffin, what did he do to her? Did he humiliate her? Did he slander her? He brought a bunch of women. He told them to dress up as men and escort her from Basra back to Medina. When Aisha was being escorted by these individuals who appeared to be men, she said, look at Ali, he has no shame. I'm the wife of the Prophet and he sends me with all of these men. When they reached Medina, they revealed to her that we weren't men. Ali called upon us, told us to dress as men to protect you and to ensure that you return home safely because you're the wife of the Prophet, out of respect for the Prophet. This is how Amir al-Mu'mineen treated someone who tried to kill him. How did the Muslims treat Sayyidah Zainab in Karbala? Did they offer her the same dignity? What did they do to the daughters of Amir al-Mu'mineen? They didn't reciprocate the same justice, the same fairness. And we as the followers of Ahlul Bayt, the least that we can do, the Imam himself, he says, you know, when he mentions how he lived his life, he says, أَلَا وَإِنِّي أَعْلَمُ أَنَّكُمْ لَا تَقْدِرُونَ عَلَى ذَلِكَ. I know that you can't be like me. وَلَكِنْ أَعِينُونِي بِوَرَعٍ وَاجْتِهَادٍ. I know you can't be like me, he says. But the one thing that I ask of you is that you help me by being pious. Do your best. The point of this lecture series, this session, is to ask ourselves this question. Imam Amir, he's only asking us for one thing: have taqwa. Make an effort. You try hard in everything in your life. Why don't you try hard when it comes to your deen? You try hard at school, at work. You excel at other things. Why don't you excel in your deen? The Imam says, I ask you, just have taqwa and ijtihad. Try hard. Put in effort. This is how we honor the legacy of the Commander of the Faithful. I ask Allah Azza wa Jal to guide us and bless us and illuminate our hearts with the teachings of Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad. This concludes our session for today. If there are any questions or comments, we can take them now. I know this was something different. It wasn't your typical lecture. It was, you know, kind of like a crash course. Do you guys find these sessions useful? Is this something that you would be interested in holding in the future? Anything that you would change? We're open to constructive criticism. Anything that you think would have made this session more helpful, more beneficial? Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I'll keep that in mind. You guys think it would have been more, you know, enjoyable to have more of a discussion as we go through this? The only concern that I have is that if I open it up for Q&A as I'm presenting, you know, we're going to digress and it's going to take a very long time to get through all of the material. So just for the sake of, you know, the fluidity of the discussion, I kind of just keep questions until the end. Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
So now that I'm sitting here thinking about it, I feel guilty for everything that I have. So, I mean, what do you do as a human being? How do you live a life that, for times where you want to give
Yeah.
more love and you want to be accountable for what you are
True.
giving, but you have earned your way to get
Yeah.
it.
Now, one thing that I want you to bear in mind is I don't want, the takeaway message to be, I'm only going to eat bread and water, or bread and yogurt. The Imam himself says that you can't be like me. That's why I'm your Imam. If you could be like me, then you would be the Imam. What the Imam is trying to teach us is that, we have to be cautious when it comes to dunya. And the Quran actually teaches us how to ensure that we don't get too attached. Don't you notice that when Allah describes the believers, He typically mentions two qualities. الَّذِينَ يُقِيمُونَ الصَّلَاةَ وَيُؤْتُونَ الزَّكَاةَ. That the believers are those who establish prayer and they give alms, they give charity. One of the ways to ensure that your heart doesn't get conquered by the love of this material world is that you have to get into the habit of giving, right? If you buy, designer clothes, train yourself to give away something. Whenever you get something, give it away to a less fortunate person. Because you have to give. Because giving is not just about benefiting the recipient. You need to give so you don't get too attached. So giving is a powerful way of combating, fighting this disease known as hubbud dunya. So my recommendation would be, try your best to simplify your life as much as you can. If you go in your closet and you have all these clothes and you haven't worn them in years, give it away. Don't make such a big deal. I'm not saying don't wear brand name clothes, don't wear good clothes. Dress nicely, wear good clothes, wear good quality things, drive a nice car, that's fine. But, don't make your life revolve around it. Don't let it occupy your thoughts and your time and your energy. There are some people, like some kids, they want to buy like Jordans, and that's all they think about. They work the summer, save money. I want a Louis Vuitton bag, $2,000, $3,000. Why? So just as you take dunya, make sure that you're also giving. Because if you're just taking and consuming, that's when the attachments will take place. You'll become attached. So you don't want to become obsessed and too attached. And that's why giving, sadaqah, is very important. It benefits you even more than the recipient, because it keeps the heart protected from overindulging. Let's have a question here. Go. Yeah. 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 True. Yeah, I'll definitely keep that in mind. I was also thinking maybe what would be even more beneficial is that in addition to having a PowerPoint, and it doesn't need to be something, even just kind of like bullet points, just main ideas, and have a handout, and this, I think Brother Mehdi was mentioning this to me, where you have a bit of space, so in the margins you can kind of write notes, so so it becomes a more structured, outline. Yeah, maybe that would be a way to improve. And yes. Yeah. So the sister is asking about mental health. What can we do as a community to deal with this growing epidemic, which is, mental health, depression, youth who are, becoming increasingly suicidal because of, things that are happening in their lives and whatnot. Number one, I think that people who are not qualified should stop giving advice. I think that, Rasulullah says half of knowledge is to say, I don't know. I've been to communities where, you have someone who's depressed. They need treatment. And they're told, I don't know, just read Dua Joshan Kabir. Read some Quran and you'll be fine. When I break my leg and I have, if I'm having if I have asthma, do you tell me to also read Surah Al-Waqi'ah? Or you tell me to go to the doctor so they can give you medication, take an inhaler? So we have to stop equating depression with weak faith. I think this is very dangerous. Because when someone is depressed and then you add on the fact that your iman is weak, you can potentially push them over the edge. So everybody has to stay in their lane. If you're not a therapist, if you're not a psychologist, if you're not a psychiatrist, if you're not trained, you shouldn't be giving advice about mental health. You should be a compassionate listener. You should tell people that, I'm sorry that you're in pain. Let's try to find some help for you. So I think we have to kind of remove the stigma that's attached to mental health. And I think we have to encourage people to get help, to talk to, it's okay to talk to a non-Muslim therapist. They're not going to make you say, it's not like you walk in and they say, okay, before I treat you, the La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah, you have to relinquish your iman before we begin treatment. No one does that. Do you go to a Muslim heart surgeon? Does your dentist have to be Muslim? Why does a therapist or a psychologist have to be Muslim? You go and you tell them what you want to achieve. Sometimes it helps to just talk to someone who's not connected to your social network, who's not in your family, who can just listen, because sometimes it helps just to say things out loud so you can identify what the problems are. So I've been to communities that have the resources to help, people who are suffering of having some mental issues, who are depressed. So again, I think that we have to first deal with the taboo, and people who are not qualified just have to stop giving advice. And there's no shame, there's no shame in, admitting that you need help. I think it's very courageous to admit that I can't do this alone, that I can't just expect to read Quran and be cured. Sometimes Allah is helping you through people, but you keep on shutting the door. So that's what my recommendation would be. Yeah. Exactly. True. Exactly. Any other questions or comments? The sister in the back. Yeah. Yeah. Inshallah, may Allah bless you. Sometimes what you see in the world today is a product of history. It's difficult to understand the dynamics of the Muslim world if you don't know the historical context, the events that led to the formation of different sects, different groups, different ideologies. So, that's the point of these sessions, to kind of spark your interest so you can do your own research, so you can take your Islamic education into your own hands, that you don't just become someone who gets your Islamic education 40 days out of the year, Ramadan and Muharram, and that's it. Then you're on vacation for the rest of the year. Any other questions or comments? Is there? Yeah. 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 I think you have to remind people of the way that the imams conducted themselves. People. Sometimes I'm invited to communities, and sometimes the community that hosts you. There's some organizer that say, "Oh, Sheikh, I want you to talk about this subject, that subject. Make sure you do la'na of this person. Make sure. Otherwise, if you look at Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq alayhi salam, he was in Medina. Do you think if the Imam alayhi salam engaged in divisive rhetoric, do you think if he was sectarian, do you think Abu Hanifa would have been a student? Do you think Malik ibn Anas would have become a student? Imam al-Sadiq had students from different sects. There were even non-Muslims that were his students. Even atheists were comfortable debating him. So this shows you that the Imams, they focused on things that benefited society. Our problem is, when you go to our mosque, we're just preaching to the choir. We talk about things that concern a small segment of the community. Have you guys ever heard of Joel Osteen? He's in your backyard, right? I spend a lot of time researching and just seeing, what makes a speaker successful. Why is this person, how does he attract such a huge crowd? The answer is right there. Positivity. They make you feel good. When I remember there was a brother who told me that, Sheikh, when I come to the masjid, I don't know if it's a wafat or a wilada, because it's always depressing. It's always depressing. Joel Osteen, he begins his service with a joke. Every sermon he begins it with a joke. It's very lighthearted. And he talks about very general issues. About never losing hope. Is there any human being who says, oh, this subject doesn't apply to me? How to, develop a culture of charity. How to become forgiving. How to be a better husband. How to be a better husband? Yeah, she can. So the point is, going back to your question, I think that we have to remind ourselves that the Imams focused on things that benefited the Ummah. If Imam al-Sadiq was, engaged in sectarian rhetoric, he would have never attracted people to his minbar. So I think people just need to be reminded, and you're not going to be able to eliminate it. It's always going to exist, but the point is you have to connect with like-minded people and kind of build that base. And there are like-minded people in every community that I've been to. So you have to build an alliance with like-minded people. There's always going to be people in every community that are going to be divisive, that are dividers. But you have to connect with, people who uniters. Yeah. Yeah.
She said, what happens is that they want you to Zainab gave khutbah. Like the alim is now equal to Tyrant and Yazid. If the person is having different opinions. No. Bibi Zainab exposed this. So this is how people are brainwashed. I don't know where it's coming from.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going on. It's so difficult to deal with people who are going extreme on religion and they think they have the right to judge. They are the people who are destroying us.
Yeah. I mean, that's the reason why, youth don't come to the mosque. There's so much, division, and it's almost like we're creating cults. Yeah.
Explain it to them. They'll not be interested in coming here anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, just as I said, you have to build relationships with like-minded people. I mean, that's the only way. And hopefully, people who have that attitude of building, on unity, hopefully one day they're going to start to outnumber or at least have more influence. But, it's unfortunate that, instead of, making 70 excuses for your fellow Muslim brother or sister, we make 70 accusations. It's the opposite. And I mean, I've been a victim of this myself. I mean, recently I was contacted by a community, and they told me that, oh, we got a call from someone, and they were upset that you were invited, and they were encouraging us to not invite. I mean, you should take that as a compliment. Believe me, that if people have that much time on their hands, that they're keeping track of where you're going, what you're doing, that means you're doing something positive, inshallah. So, again, if you can't hold these programs at the center, then, it doesn't need to be at the mosque. It can be anywhere. But the point is, you have to connect with people who have that same vision. And don't be disenchanted when you run into these people. These people existed during the time of the Prophet, and they're going to exist until the Day of Judgment. You can't eliminate negative people. You just got to stop focusing so much on them. Just brush it off. Focus on the positive, and, initiatives and projects that benefit people, that's done with ikhlas, they're going to last. Projects that are very ego-driven and are built on dividing, they're going to fizzle out. They might last for 5 years, 10 years, but eventually, what benefits people remains. And everything else will just fizzle out, and just let it fizzle out. Some people, it's not even worth arguing with them. Let them talk to them. Let them have a monologue.
One more question. I have a teenage kid, and she, like one day she just asked me that she was listening to music at her friends, and you cannot listen to this music. So she said, everything that makes a person happy is haram in Islam. Why is Islam so difficult? That really hit me. It's funny right now, but that really hit me because she's grown up with this mentality.
Yeah.
How do we counter that? Like, how do I sit down with her and explain that she is developing that Islam is irrelevant, like it's outdated. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
She can't listen to something what all her friends are listening to.
Yeah.
It's just a simple thing, but if she would grow up with this, then it's really alarming.
Yeah.
How would you want me to handle if you would suggest something on that?
I think when you repeat the question, it was a long question, man. So basically, how do you deal with youth that feel that Islam is just taking the fun out of their lives? That's basically what it boils down to. And, you might be shocked, but to a certain extent, I agree with them. In the sense that I think the way that we teach Islam to them is taking the fun out of their lives. Alhamdulillah, I was very fortunate that when I was growing up, I was taught Islam by my grandfather, someone who I believe actually understood Islam. And we had a lot of fun. And we never felt that Islam was boring or was too ritualistic because, my grandfather let us be kids. And I really sympathize with the sisters, because I really don't believe, I was told today by Mehdi or somebody that, You know, you have people in our community that say, you know, it's haram for a sister to learn how to swim, right? Because, you know, there's no need for you to swim. Why can't we have a rec center and have certain times where, you know, sisters can go play volleyball, play basketball, swim, you know? But I think that it needs to happen more often. It shouldn't just happen on Eid, right? It's the exception. I think it needs to be you know, something that's happening on a more regular basis. Yeah, but I think that you kind of have to form a group of girls where you guys are getting together as friends, you guys are hanging out together. You guys don't necessarily have to give a lecture to each other. You know, pray together, hang out with each other outside of the mosque, you know, build rich friendships outside of the masjid. You know, when I was younger, you know, me and my friends, we were relatively religious. We used to pray together, but then for like 8 hours we'd be playing basketball, right? And we never felt that, you know, Islam was, you know, taking the fun out of our lives. You know, we'd play video games. We always had an alternative, you know? So when you take away something from your children, when you tell them they can't do something, you have to offer them a halal alternative. You know, you really have to go out of your way to make Islam, you know, like a party for them. You really do. You know, you need to have 14 celebrations a year, you know, for the imams, and make it fun. You know, don't make it like cheesy or corny where, you know, everyone wears like, you know, birthday hats and you blow candles. They're not 4 years old anymore. You know, try to make it fun, try to make it engaging. Even the programs that you have at the mosque, it doesn't have to be a lecture every time we get together. You know, do social experiments. Right? You can get famous on YouTube by doing social experiments, Islamophobia experiments. Just, you know, do things that are gonna keep you busy. And when your kids make mistakes, you know, don't make it the end of the world, because you made mistakes when you were younger. You know, I remember there was a parent that came to me, and they had a 16-year-old, and they found out that their 16-year-old smoked weed. And it was like the day of Qiyamah was finished. La ilaha illallah. Now, again, your kids should not be afraid of you, right? They're going to make mistakes. You just have to accept that they're going to make mistakes. They're going to do stupid things. But they should feel comfortable coming to you, you know? If they're attracted to the opposite gender, if they're afraid of you, they're going to do their haram things behind closed doors. Have an open relationship with them. Make them feel comfortable. You know, how should I conduct myself if I like someone at school? You know, if I can't listen to music, is there something else that I can listen to at the gym, right? Do you know what I listen to when I'm at the gym? You want me to tell you? So, no, I don't. You know, because let's be real. You know, you're not gonna, you know, lift more when you're listening to Ziyarat Ashura. It's just, that's not gonna. No, you know, sometimes the soundtracks for certain movies, you know, they're halal. You know, have you guys ever heard of like Braveheart? You know, Braveheart. You have Gladiator. You have soundtracks of movies that are halal music. It's not the type of music that you're going to hear at a club. So you can find you have anashid that you can listen to. What is it? What is that? No. So, but the point is, you can find alternatives, and between you and Allah, you know what's halal and what's not. You know, if you're unsure, ask yourself, would they play this at a concert or in the club? If the answer is maybe yes, stay away from it. But if you come across a type of music that you don't associate with clubs or with concerts, you're permitted to listen to it. Not all music is forbidden. So I think we have to, we have to create these, these alternatives for our children. That's my humble. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
is something which is, but then she says that all of her friends don't listen to that, so she'd be irrelevant to her friends. She'd be cornered out.
Yeah.
All of these things are going on. Like it's
Yeah.
hard to discern at these times.
It's very difficult. You know, maybe, you know, you have to instill in them. And again, you have to always keep in mind that Allah, He's going to hold you responsible for your effort, not the results. You know, you could do everything right, and you know, Yaqub was a prophet. We can all agree that he was a very good father. He fulfilled his duty as a father. But he still had sons that tried to kill Yusuf. Right? So Allah is going to hold you responsible for your effort. You got to put in the effort. The results are in His hands. We have to train our kids that, listen, you have to have a stronger personality. You know, you need to be the type of person where your friends are trying to follow you, that you're the trendsetter. Be confident. You know, they're listening to it. I don't listen to that type of music. It's my life, you know. I know it's not easy. It's not easy, but we have to instill this confidence in them from a very young age. That you're the trendsetter. And I think at home you have to make them feel confident. You know, I think the way that we talk to our children is very demoralizing. You kind of break their spirit. When you're always yelling at them, you're this, you're that. You have to empower them. Make them feel like they're leaders. That everyone at school has to follow you. You're the popular kid. It's difficult, but I think that's the attitude. You know, I have Jewish friends, believe me, when they talk to their kids, they've already put it in their minds that you're not going to community college, you're going to go to an Ivy League school. You know, the world is your oyster, as they say. It has an effect when you build that type of mindset in your kids. But be confident. Oh, they make fun of you at school? Big deal. Who cares? They have low self-esteem. There's no doubt.
Disconnection. No matter how hard we try, the environment is there at home where the parents are praying and there's a good open relationship, but they still feel very disconnected.
You know, it could be, again, I mean, every case is an individual case, but kids are very good at detecting hypocrisy. So, you know, you might be praying at home and doing the rituals, but if there's lying and if there's other things going on, kids are very turned off by hypocrisy. So you have to ensure that you're practicing what you're preaching. And if you're not, you have to admit it to them. Be like, listen, I'm failing in this area. We're all human, but let's help each other get better. But if you're going to play the whole I'm holier than thou and your kids know that you're not, then it's not, you know, there was a brother that was telling me, you know, Sheikh, my son is going to Cancun for spring break. And he never wakes up for Salat al-Fajr. I told him, where did you go for spring break when you were his age? He says, Sheikh, that's not the point. And that's what because kids know that when you were my age, you did the same thing, and the hypocrisy is still going on. If you don't wake up for Salat al-Fajr, do you think your child's going to wake up? If you're praying and you're lying and you're cheating, believe me, they're going to be like, what's the point of this religion? It's not making you a better person. So why should I follow Islam? My atheist friend has better akhlaq than you. Maybe I should be an atheist. So I think we got to pay close attention to the way that we conduct ourselves at home. If you mess up, as a parent, you have to admit your mistakes, because when you admit your own wrongdoings, you're also teaching your kids. That even, you know, as a parent, we make mistakes, you make mistakes, but we all have to try to improve ourselves. Be very open and honest, and never make them feel like they've crossed the line of no return. No matter what your kids do, they smoke, they drink, they do whatever haram, don't make them feel like that's it. It's the worst thing for a parent to say, I've washed my hands clean of you. You're done. Allah doesn't do that. Why do you do that? So you have to be very careful with the way that you conduct yourself. And you have to praise them for their achievements. Like if your daughter is wearing hijab at 13 and you didn't, tell her that. Be like, you're so much stronger than I was. Instead of focusing on what they, instead of always talking about, you need to stop listening to music, you need to stop listening to music, remind her that, you're doing really good with your hijab. You were a lot stronger than I was. That's how you build that confidence. You make them feel valued. If you're always pointing out what they're doing wrong, you're going to break their spirits. And then they're going to want to throw the hijab off. So you're going to lose, they're going to listen to music and they're not going to have hijab. Because you're putting so much pressure on them. So you have to pick, just like Amir al-Mu'mineen, when he became the Khalifa, he picked his battles. There were people that were doing bid'ah. You got to prioritize. If your kid is listening to music and you know that if you keep on bringing it up, you're going to push them away, just let it go for now. Focus on other things. Strengthen other parts of their faith, and hopefully that habit, they'll drop it later. Because if you put too much pressure, I'm telling you, it's going to backfire. I'd rather have a daughter that wears hijab and listens to music than putting so much pressure on them that they drop the hijab and they end up in the clubs because I just kept on pushing on the music. Sometimes you have to look at the glass half full. Any other questions or comments? I've been pretty lazy after the month of Ramadan, I'll admit that. But yeah, there's a new video coming out soon. I don't know if you guys know, but I make, every month I release a video, and I started this about 6 months ago, where I create a video about every prophet that was mentioned in the Quran, starting with Adam, and just, it's a 3 minute, 2-3 minute animated video with a practical lesson that we can learn from each prophet. So, we did Adam alayhi salam, Idris, Nuh, Hud, Salih, Ibrahim, and I just finished the one on Ismail, which was very difficult. Come up with a practical lesson that we can learn from Ismail. So yeah, I'm doing that, but I also have my ups and downs where you feel kind of lazy. It happens to all of us. People think that, oh, Shaykh, you must be reading Quran 24 hours. No, I don't. There are some days where I'm not in the mood. It happens, and I just think, just like, some days when you go to the gym, if you lift too much, you're gonna pull a muscle. Sometimes you're just fatigued, and we have spiritual fatigue. And even Ahlul Bayt, they say sometimes you feel that your heart is, inclined towards Allah. Sometimes you're in the mood to read dua, read Quran. When you feel spiritual, take advantage, ride the wave. But there are days where you're just not in the mood. It happens to all of us. It's normal. The word qalb comes from the word, qallaba yuqallibu, to change. It's in the nature of the heart to fluctuate. So if you're not in the mood, don't push yourself. Just do the wajib. That's it. If you're at a spiritual low, just do the bare minimum. Do the wajib. Don't ever abandon the wajib. Even if you're not in the mood, force yourself to do the wajib. But if you're not feeling too spiritual, don't do anything extra. Because if you force yourself to do extra, ziyarat ashura, reading Quran, dua, when you're not in the mood, you're going to develop a hatred towards ibadah. You're going to hate it. You're going to develop an aversion to it. So you have to be gentle with your soul, with your heart. So yeah, it happens to all of us. It happens to me. So there are days where I just do the bare minimum and I play video games. Just disconnect. You go for a walk, go for the gym. You need a break. It's human nature. You're not a bad person. But you just got to make sure that those fluctuations are happening at higher levels. Right? So when you're having a bad day, you do your wajibat and you might read some short du'as. And that's your low. But then when you're having a spiritual high, you're doing salatul layl, you're going above and beyond. So the fluctuations are always going to happen, but you want to ensure that they're happening at higher levels. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. You have to refer to your marja. Do you follow Sayyid Sistani? Sayyid Sistani is very strict about cards and chess, because even if you're not using them for gambling purposes, they're still heavily associated with gambling. In fact, even if you go online and you type in chess games, the majority of them are going to involve some type of gambling and some type of money. Again, that's what I found from my own research, but it's, you have to find an alternative. Play Uno or something. Find other games, other board games that can kind of occupy your time. So with these issues, we have to refer to our maraja. Any other questions or comments? All in all, you guys had a good time, inshallah? Useful time? When am I coming back? When just like they told Amir al-Mu'minin, it's too hot. During the winter time, I'll come. So the sisters that went home barefoot yesterday, you guys can
who is that?
Pick up. I don't know if they want to take them as
give it as a gift to someone.
As gifts, and give it to a friend that you think is going to hell. Be like, since you're going to hell, at least read about paradise.
Yeah, they came barefoot today because they don't trust us anymore over here.
Thank you.
No problem.
Well, I would like to thank Sheikh for taking time out and coming over here. I hope his baby will feel better next time, and he can come here, join us with his whole family. And inshallah, we will invite him soon. We've gotten some positive feedback from you all as to how to continue these things. Sheikh is also talking about some of the things that possibly the community needs and we can talk about in the future. So I would strongly suggest that you guys give us your suggestions as to the topics that need to be covered. Someone said that we started from the Khilafah of Usman. Maybe we should have started a long time ago and just covered the whole history lesson. Maybe we can go back and do that. Or we can do something completely different, learn about aqaid, or learn about fiqh, like a whole 2 days about fiqh, about how to simple stuff, how to do wuzu, how to do simple things that we think we know, but there might be some subtle things that we can still learn. Maybe our kids need to learn more of this. So whatever suggestions you have, please do give us your suggestions so we can carry this on in the future also. And originally we were planning to have this whole day sessions, like 8 to 12 and 1 to 5, like a lot more. But I don't think we're ready for that, right? Yeah. Well, that's what I was speaking with Sister Laya, his wife, and she was kind of helping us arrange with everything. So originally that was the plan. And but we were going to cover a lot more subjects too, like different subjects, not stick with one thing, different subjects. But we'll see how it works out in the future, and inshallah we'll try to improve up on this format, but we will have other programs. You had a suggestion?
My daughter came yesterday, and she's 18, and she liked the historical aspect of it. And she said that I would like, when we go to other centers that she has been going to, that I need something from my practical life. The issues that we go through as youth, I don't have answers to that.
Yes.
So to sit there with a alim and to talk about how to deal with the problems they're going through. Because we just talked about mental health very briefly. There's so many kids who are suffering for so much, because of the social media. There's so much depression. They see everybody's life so perfect, I understand you need to go to a professional, but as a community, what do we do for these youth? So I think that kind of workshop for youth, especially, we have more workshop based. Yeah, we had one yesterday for parents, and it's excellent.
Yeah, and maybe have sign-ups, so you have commitments from, so they take it seriously, they show up, and we have proper.
Yeah, inshallah we'll do a registration and sign up for the next events, so people are, yeah. Now, do you guys receive our emails, by the way? How did you find out about this? You receive our emails at the youth@alghadir.com. Is that what you get? Okay. So you heard announcement. So we try to do different types of announcement. The best way to communicate with us is through our Facebook page. I'm sure most of you have Facebook, right? So if you have any suggestions, you can message us, and even underneath the advertisement for this program, if you can just comment on some of the things that you've learned, some of the things that you would want to learn in the future, because Sheikh himself can read those comments, and he can kind of sort of see where we need to be, and we need to see where we need to be. So comment on there. If you want to be anonymous, then you can email us at that youth@alghadir.org. So email us, and we will get back to you. So whatever suggestions you have, you're most welcome to take them. And once again, on behalf of all of us, I would really like to thank Sheikh for taking the time out, imparting us with his knowledge, bringing this beautiful book that I really looking forward to read. You know, especially that one chapter. Yeah. Okay. So, inshallah. Salawat. Allahumma salli ala.